It is this extraordinarily complex science, and it's
Yeah, I know.
and I'm a psychologist, but if I went to go work at Facebook, they would say go like as a AI person or like a persuasive designer, they would say get the heck out. Like you need extraordinary levels of training to do this, and
Yeah,
it's
wow.
it's such a complicated science, and that's why after staring at it forever, the title came of Better Than Real Life, because
Mhm.
if you distill the science down, that's what it is.
Yeah, I love it.
I
From genuinely.
saw your video podcast last night with is it Kara or Kara?
Kara Alimo, yes.
So that was neat. I saw a lot of that.
Okay, good. Yeah, she focuses on girls. So we dug into that. I just talked to a 20-year-old yesterday who told me that her and all her friends wish they had been given phones later or social media later, but they never would have told you that when they were a teenager. It takes that time to look back and be like, wow,
It
that's
takes
right.
us adults to step up and help
Yeah,
them, and schools.
exactly. Yep.
Is Kaylin Carr? Do you know who she is? Kaylin
Um,
Carr. She has like sort of branding, but one of her little stickers is "Play like a '90s kid."
Yeah. Oh, I was just talking with a therapist just before this, and she said that some of her teenage patients or clients, they watch old 90s movies and they feel sad because they wish that their childhood could have been like that.
Yeah.
Sad.
And my daughter, who's when she was a little bit younger, who's 21 now, yeah, it'll just roll off her tongue that like I wish I was not born with so much technology around me.
Yeah. And you're right. It takes parents' decisions. So let's get into that. And just to welcome listeners to Scrolling to Death today, I have Dr. Richard Freed, who is a psychologist and author of the new book called Better Than Real Life: How Silicon Valley's Secret Science of Persuasive Design is Stealing Childhood. So welcome. Thank you for being here.
Nikki, it's really good to be with you.
Yeah, we are going to try to break this down in a way that parents like me can understand and apply to our decisions here at home, because parents are told that social media is safe. We are told it's built to connect our kids with their friends and allow them to be creative. Is this generally true if we just talk generally?
Better Than Real Life does two big things. It introduces persuasive design, this hidden secret science
Hmm.
that is pulling kids away from the real world to live on a screen. And the
Yep.
second thing it does is really expose that the key pop culture leaders with respect to kids and health and tech are essentially industry funded or industry aligned, and they essentially act as PR. So when a parent logs on and they go to the top of their search list or hop onto some online program, it is gonna be likely like, how do these people get such giant platforms? How do they? Because they're funded by Zuckerberg.
Right.
Like, stop
Right.
it. So
Yeah.
that's where so much of that comes from.
Hmm. I keep seeing ads of celebrities promoting Instagram's teen accounts, now soon to be expanded to Facebook. I wish they would just put that funding to making their products safer rather than trying to sell us on parental controls that don't really work.
Correct. The first thing that goes around any middle school or high school, but definitely middle school, is how to hack that or how to get around it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And within an hour or two, parents say like, "Oh, and then lo and behold, after 6 months, they find my kid's been living on this and has
Mhm.
developed a real problem."
Well, and all they have to do is lie about their age, and then they get around any parental controls, right?
Right.
But why aren't I want to get into persuasive design, but on this topic, like why won't social media companies implement actual age verification, in your opinion?
That's As I get older, it's just disappointing just to see this big word called money come up. It's just about money.
Mhm.
So many people bend reality, bend science, all for the sake of literally living in a not just one giant house, but on multiple estates, on multiple islands. It's about money.
Because if they actually verify ages, millions of accounts would go away because there's millions of children under 13 on the platforms who aren't allowed to be on there.
And they want to get kids essentially from they're never going to stop because they're going to go for kids at birth,
Mhm.
because once you loop a kid in there on that platform, and it's like if you're little and you've grown up in a house And no matter if that house is nice or not so nice, that house feels like home to you. When you go back as an adult, like, wow, do I feel like this is home?
Mhm.
Because I grew up with that. We as humans are meant to do that. So Facebook, Instagram, all these other companies want kids younger and younger and younger, and they're never going to stop, in my opinion. They want to brand kids, and screen time essentially, the screen habits start to form at infancy.
And I
So
think at
with
some
respect to
point,
time, so I'm sure
yeah.
it's also with respect to brands.
Yes, and I know at some point Facebook was developing like a child-based platform, and I think Fair Play filed an FTC complaint against that, and that plan went away. But they're trying to get it to our kids now through schools. So, Minecraft, for example, has an educational program that is being used in schools. Instagram has partnered and sponsored the National PTA and has a Meta for Education program offering VR tech to schools. Do you feel like there's benefit to these companies being involved in schools, or is the game plan just to addict them young?
I just recently spoke at a really large school district, and the school district actually sort of is one of the first to recognize that what they're doing as far as they're bringing in Common Sense Media's digital citizenship program
Okay.
to educate kids. And their school but they're actually recognizing that that's unethical because their school has a rule that you are not supposed to bring industry interests into schools, or you probably need to disclose them. But essentially, Common Sense Media is funded by Zuckerberg. It is a tens of millions of dollar ed tech organization. It makes its money by putting kids before screens at home and school. I know this is hard for many parents to hear. When my kids were younger, if you wanted to figure out what the content of some movie you might want to watch your kids or kids might want to watch, like, okay, let's look at that. Common Sense Media has evolved, or I would say devolved, since 2012. It's become this giant juggernaut that profits by putting kids before screens at home and school. It takes money from Zuckerberg. It promotes social media, which makes me sick. And there are elements within Common Sense Media, these smaller elements that pick out science, but the broader thrust of this organization is to sell kids on screens and you on screens for your kids at home and school, even though you see the CEO and founder, Jim Steyer, do all he can to say the opposite. I'm going to protect my kids from these screens and these consumer technologies. So that's just abundantly unfair. So this school district is saying, like, we're bringing in Common Sense Media. They knew before my book and so forth, they knew that that was unethical. And they're saying, like, we've got to get this digital citizenship program out of the school because it promotes social media to kids
Mhm.
in seventh grade. It's talking about how great it is. Kids in seventh grade are 12 years of age. You're not legally allowed to be on most social media platforms until you're 13. But in any case, like, as
Ingratiate.
soon as they can, it's just essentially training wheels to put kids on the technologies that Common Sense Media is funded by.
It's so concerning that these respectable organizations that have been around forever that we trust. I mean, and I get asked when I go places from school administrators what about Common Sense Media? Because they are starting to ask the right questions. And are there any other major organizations that we should be concerned about taking recommendations from because of that funding?
This breaks my heart to say this. I work with pediatricians every day. I'm a clinician in a joint practice and work with pediatricians, but and the American Academy of Pediatrics is these are thousands of pediatricians, tens of thousands of pediatricians who've devoted their lives to kids. The American Academy of Pediatrics is, by and large, the organization is helpful, but there is a rogue anti-science group within the American Academy of Pediatrics that oversees what mostly what parents see about American Academy of Pediatrics, and that's media recommendations. And it's headed up, one of the key leaders is Dr. Moreno.
Mhm.
You can't do this. It makes my stomach turn when I say this. She's been funded by Facebook and Instagram. It's like the dietary guidelines of the American Academy of Pediatrics being brought to you by McDonald's. Like, if they of course would never let that happen, but
Mhm.
somehow they've carved that out. I call it the Silicon Valley exception, that these somehow social media corporations are in the public good. But she is promoting, like a PR agent, kids' social media, working against kids' health. And the American Academy of Pediatrics, their media group says screen time doesn't matter so much, which is a lie, because the science-based side of the American Academy of Pediatrics says screen time is a risk factor for kids' obesity.
Right.
Like the same organization is working against itself to hurt kids' health. Like I pray that those within the American Academy of Pediatrics, those who lead it, I had a conversation with them. They push back. I'm hoping that powerful people within step up and say we can't do this to kids anymore.
Okay. And you go into great detail on that in your book. And so I recommend parents dig into that further. There was a trending video that went around the last couple of days. You may have seen the U.S. Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, at a summit talking about AI in education, but she kept calling it A1, like the steak sauce, and talking about, have you not seen this?
I have not. I sometimes go down a rabbit hole to work to do all, because I'm a
Yeah.
clinician in practice, and then I'm working a lot to talk and so forth. So sometimes I don't get a chance to see what I should. But that's really able
She's
to.
talking about how we should be introducing A1 into schools as young as possible. And she called it A1 multiple times. And she's the Secretary of Education in our government.
What I'd really be worried about is I talk about with respect to Common Sense Media, amongst the many other things that Common Sense Media is. I can't believe I'm saying this, but they are also they have an affiliate that's a venture capital ed tech firm that has venture capital money invested in AI technology to put it in schools. And they claim that they're independent. I believe Common Sense Media puts itself at risk, because you can't say you're independent and then say all these things. But so I kind of wonder if that is coming from people like Common Sense Media, who's pushing screens in schools because that's how they make their money.
Yeah. Well, without getting too political, how do we feel about all these big tech CEOs having direct access to our administration? Do we think that that's going to play out well for kids' safety?
You hear stuff growing up about the importance of science and so forth, and we're going to do our best by kids, and I think parents are feeling this too, that they see this for themselves. Like, this isn't working. My kids are being sold out. I see what these CEOs are doing. I know this is not science based. I know they're about money. I know they're just trying to grab even more of this piece of childhood, the childhood pie that they're just started like trying to carve up and take for themselves, and they want a piece of the action. And
Yeah.
it just no, we can't trust that. And that's why, Nikki, like, your podcast is so important. Like, parents are realizing, I think, for themselves, they can see with their own eyes. Like,
Mhm.
this is not okay. I want a forum where I can hear about science and have a community where that happens, where that really happens, and then when we come together with this collective action, we can push back. And
Mhm.
so, Nikki,
Yeah.
thank you for why your work is so important.
Thank you. I want to give a little education for parents on persuasive design. And you wrote that these companies are deliberately using the most advanced psychological science to increase kids' screen time. And this predictably harms their physical and mental health. And that they bet that their complex science of manipulation is too difficult for parents to grasp. Now, I thank you for betting wrong on them and breaking it down for us in a way that we can understand. And we won't be able to go into it in a lot of detail in our short time today, but talk a little bit about persuasive design and how these companies used that science to addict our children.
Silicon Valley, here it came like right after the 2000s. It wanted to find a way to increase time on device, or as Instagram calls it, teen time spent. That's all they care about. How can we do that? How can we shift childhood from the outdoors, from family, from school, from creative play, anything, onto a screen?
Mm-hmm.
Lo and behold, here's this science being developed in the 90s by Dr. BJ Fogg at Stanford, persuasive design. And he describes it better than any, if you want to know what persuasive design is, his website back in the heady days of persuasive design, I think it's pulled down now because maybe we're embarrassed, but it's machines designed to change humans. That's what it is. Like,
Oh.
we're going to develop these digital machines to use the highest levels of psychology and neuroscience.
Mhm.
And what it's going to do, as Dr. Fogg talks about, is we all walk around because we evolved for 4 million years as hunters and gatherers in the Stone Age. We all have these Achilles heels. that our brains were really well designed for being a hunter-gatherer, but they're not really designed in this time of abundance and where you can just get food out of you can walk 3 steps and get food out of the fridge. It puts our physical health at risk, and to be potentially inundated with rewards that are really easy to get. Like for a Stone Age person, if you're the way that we beat out Neanderthals is like we figured out a way to get as much reward, and that is like food and procreation for as little effort as possible. So you see all these techniques go after our DNA. And you see the scientists behind the screen say, we're going to give kids as much reward on a slot machine schedule for as little effort as possible. So to be a hunter-gatherer is really hard. You skin your knee, you break an ankle, you put yourself at risk to die, truthfully.
Yeah.
Kids today literally roll over in their bed. They push a few buttons and they are getting inundated with just sort of epic rewards. And that is that's one of the key, that's Fogg's behavior model. That is one of the key persuasive design techniques.
Okay. There's a stat that Jonathan Haidt shares where teenage boys used to be get the highest rate of broken bones, obviously, because they're outside playing. And now they're lower than elderly people. Like boys aren't breaking their bones anymore because they're not going outside to play because how could you not, when you have access, how could you not access this addictive game or this addictive YouTube platform when it's holding you there?
Exactly. And one of the key elements of persuasive design that I talk about is supernormal stimuli, or what I call supernormal technology. Supernormal stimuli was invented by Nicholas Tinbergen, or he discovered it and he won the Nobel Prize for it. So it's making a jacked up, ultra bumped up stimulus and making it a man-made sort of like stimuli and that overwhelms our DNA. And he did that with, you might have seen, like you can trick songbirds by taking these giant day glow or eggs, these plastic eggs that are huge, and songbirds are little, and you paint them up day glow blue and you put giant polka dots on them. And songbirds will do the two things that supernormal stimuli are. They'll leave their real world lives behind, their eggs behind, to try to clamber up, do everything they can to sit on top of this giant fake egg, only to roll off. So you can create supernormal stimuli for humans. The fast food industry has figured that out. We're going to send chemists into labs and give you as much fat, salt, and sugar in this perfect supernormal combination that's going to overwhelm our DNA, because that's what made you win as a hunter-gatherer. For boys, we're going to create a supernormal stimulus. Boys, through all of human history, did really two things to honestly to be able to mate or procreate. So this is going down deep in your genes. In your tribe, you needed to be a really good hunter, fighter, and really good at building shelter. So, and if you didn't do those things, they would never set you up. And if you did them really well, that set you up with like the best mate in the tribe. So it is down deep in boys' DNA to say, like, this is what I should be doing. So what do you know? We see the video game industry create these status-filled platforms that give you that all about hunting and fighting. Fortnite's about like two things: hunting, fighting, and building shelter. It's going after boys' DNA in this perfect little status-filled environment. And boys just roll over in bed and click a few buttons, and they're getting that DNA based down deep in their soul stimulus. So why in God's name would you ever get up to go throw a ball or do anything else? It's going, and you see the developers of these video games literally say that's what we're going to do.
I'm going to ask you straight up, should we be giving our boys access to video games?
There's this huge movement. Jonathan Haidt's brought more attention to it than anyone. He's used his really big platform for really good things. To really say, let's push back the age when kids get social media and smartphones.
Yeah.
I think we're going to start to wake up and do what Silicon Valley parents are doing, which is, at least some of them, is pushing back the age when kids get video games. Because they are boys are changing. Boys don't break bones, but if you and I decided to visit a random college in the United States and we counted men and women there would be nearly 60% women and only 40% men. Like, what do boys do all the time that girls don't do so much? And it's gaming. Boys game all this time, and there's really strong research that video games specifically hurt kids' academics. And sort of these video game apologists like to try to like talk around that and say it gives kids good like hand-eye coordination.
Yeah.
Yeah, to be a better to be a better video gamer, really. But
Right.
let's look at the real fact, which is being a good video gamer is not going to get you into college. What gets you in there is mostly good grades in high school.
Yeah.
And girls are kicking the crap out of boys because they are not, yes, they're sucked in by social media, but I think video games for boys
Mhm.
are it. Like they've figured out persuasive design. So persuasive design is the what. Or
Mhm.
it's the what and the why. Like what is there? It's just the essence of it. Like everybody sort of knows these technologies are different. Like persuasive design tells us what it is.
Yeah.
That's why it's at risk. That's why my kid watching a movie, maybe with their brother or sister or with the family or a TV show,
Yeah.
okay, go ahead and spend a little time doing that. Consumer technologies, video games, social media, online videos. That's not screens. That is it's a Skinner box, which is a
Mm.
behavioral conditioning chamber where
Mhm.
you have rats push little buttons. That's what
Oh,
that is for kids.
yikes. You talk about how psychologists have figured out how to use pleasure and pain to keep our kids using tech products longer. And I'm interested in the pain part. And I wonder if this is why we see so many kids' algorithms filled with like depressive content, suicide content, self-harm content, eating disorder, like all that bad stuff. Is that because like, does that keep them on longer? Is this related?
Fogg's behavioral model is behavior, which means like we want you on a screen is equal to MAT. M is motivation, and that is pleasure. That is like for Stone Age persons, that's eating and procreating. Fogg talks about we're going to take that motivation and we're going to turn it into we're going to digitize it. We're going to turn it into levels and followers and likes and account. But motivation is also it's rewards, but it's also punishments, and
Mm.
so much of it is a social punishment, FOMO. Like if you are a mammal or if you're a human, to get pushed away from your tribe, for a lot of mammals that meant certain death, including for humans. So, and girls who are so driven and all these things take advantage of the genetic strengths that kids have. Girls have a strength in social cognition and bonding. We've created a stimulus that not only gives you're driven to likes and followers and rewards, but if you're not on it, you're being punished
Yeah.
by experiencing FOMO, that you are not a part of your tribe. And Fogg, it disturbs me to say this. I've written about him and he's really tried to back away from this science that he largely fathered. But
Mhm.
if you read his stuff, he's going to say motivation is a real great, powerful driver. Go ahead, Silicon Valley, use it. But you know what's an even more powerful thing? To like threaten punishment. Like a fear of a punishment is a more powerful
Yeah.
reward for humans. So for girls, especially, FOMO is when you try to limit a girl once she's been stuck on a phone and social media. If you try to limit that, girls oftentimes cut and get depressed and can end up in the hospital. It's going to be so important for us to wake up and realize the way to really solve this is to push back the age dramatically when kids get these things. Because once Silicon Valley's got its teeth into these kids,
Mhm.
it's really a lot harder to try to address.
Yeah, and I mean, I interviewed a mom, Jenny Desario, whose son Mason took his life after she took his phone away because he was so addicted to it, and that was his out. And he was also being served content showing him and glorifying guns, showing him suicide content from TikTok as well. Um,
I'm sorry.
yeah, so a situation has gotten worse. You wrote that, quote, it's like kids have shifted from using marijuana to methamphetamine when it comes to screen use. It sounds like it was already bad with the development of this persuasive design technology, and but it's gotten worse. What's changed over time?
They're getting better. What you do is you turn AI loose on this stuff.
Mhm.
You have supercomputers that weigh hundreds of tons that take up an entire building, and you push a button and you say, "Go find whatever it is that's going to make kids spend more time on this platform
Mhm.
that no human is ever going to recognize." There are these persuasive designers that work for the consumer technology industry, they set up these experiments and they set them up in real time. They can do what's called A/B testing. Social media companies and video game companies can tweak it in real time. Let's run. You're essentially running like a rat-like experiment, but you can send. We're going to take this group of 5,000 and this group of 5,000. We're going to give them this and this, and you're all doing it in real time. And whichever one does better at driving time on device, not only for today, but
Mhm.
a year from now, we're going to keep that one. But it's measuring kids in real time,
Yeah.
like right now. And this experiment like is just push a button and AI will figure out this stuff in real time. So yes, it is extraordinarily powerful. And as I talk about it, like Fortnite is I'm in the Wall Street Journal talking about Fortnite. Fortnite became a different animal for video games for younger kids. Like, why is that? A lot of it has to do with Epic Games brought in Dr. Celia Hodent, who has a PhD in psychology, a powerful persuasive designer who studied like child development and neuroscience, and she built this game to use brain science to change kids' behavior. Like that
Why would she
used
do that? Why would she be okay with that?
I'm s- I again as I get older, I guess it doesn't to spend time in this universe is to make one really sad. To come out of it and to talk to people like you and to
Mhm.
parents who understand this stuff
Yeah.
makes me feel much better about humankind. But
Yeah.
I think so many of these people are they just get down in this rabbit hole. Like if you watch sort of Oppenheimer and how the
Mhm.
A bomb was built, people just humans have this tendency to like go build something because they can without thinking about the consequences.
Mhm.
And then once
Yeah.
they do, they and Dr. Hodent, who built Fortnite and has left Epic Games, now kind of says, "I'm a little bit sorry," or "I'm
Oh,
worried." Like
okay.
it's a little bit late. Or what are you doing really to go reach parents and to help them now?
Yeah, and Silicon Valley's motto of move fast and break things can't those things can't be children. They just can't, and they have been. And so I think parents are rising up in opposition. I think, though, I still get a lot of comments if I share harm to a child through addiction or something that happened on social media. I get a lot of comments saying parents' fault. Parents' fault. Parents should have protected them. Parents should have not let them have the device. What do you say about like the blame game?
Yikes. That is an industry spun narrative to put the blame on parents.
Yeah.
That's a lot why I wrote Better Than Real Life, because I'm
Mhm.
a clinician in practice and I have families coming in telling me that they've lost their kid. These are good families that are
Yep.
caring, that are doing everything they can.
Yep.
Meanwhile, I know that there is a tiny sliver of what I call the tech elite who understand persuasive design
Mhm.
to an extent. They sort at least know sort of what's behind the screen, and those
Mhm.
are people at the very top of the tech industry, the very top of the Silicon Valley propaganda machine,
Yep.
led by Common Sense Media, Jim Steyer, the very top of the child health organizations, the APA, Mitch Prinstein. These people say, I am working my bottom off to protect my kid. There's so much about, or my child's going to get one childhood and
Mhm.
yours is going to get another because their organizations turn around. Like Steyer says, I'm going to protect my kids from screens and social media and all this stuff. Meanwhile, Common Sense Media, his organization, is shoving it down parents' throats, saying like this is a really good thing for your kid to be on. Like it makes me sick. So
Yeah.
parents are living out in this world where Common Sense Media, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the APA, all industry aligned, a lot in many of those industry funded, are convincing parents that this is where your kids are supposed to be. They've bought out kids' schools, and they've gone in there before parents sort of woke up to this stuff and realized what was happening, and they
Yeah.
aligned with schools and they said this is a great thing. And like there's this Common Sense Media digital citizenship program that ended up at my school for free. How did it get in there for free? And it promotes
Right.
kids' social media. Like that's what kids are living with. That's what parents hear. So moms and dads are not hearing the truth. And I didn't,
Mhm.
before I went and really figured this stuff out starting in 2018. It's embarrassing to figure out how long it took to really write this book.
Yeah.
It's brings science forward in a way I hope that parents can understand, but it took so much of my life to write this and a lot of effort, but what kept driving me is like, oh my god, like parents don't know what I see
Mhm.
here and they've got to know.
Yeah. And so parents can educate themselves through Better Than Real Life. I also want to just touch on some of the recommendations that you give to parents. You give recommendations for policymakers as well, but I want to focus on parents and what are like maybe the top two or three things that parents can take away today that they can apply to their own choices at home.
Sure. Nikki, love your community. Like, this is where parents need to be. Like, let's make, and once you're here, like, then we can sort of start to collectively push back. We can have communities in school and faith-based organizations that say things like, we are going to push back the age. We see what these tech elite are doing
Yeah.
for their privileged kids. Let's not be sold down the river for our kids. Let's also push back the age when kids get devices. Like, if there is nothing more helpful, if an organization wants to really help kids and they're a faith-based organization or a school-based organization, come together, or community, come together and push back the age when kids get devices. Make a community. Go to kids. Jonathan Haidt is really leading the way with respect to getting smartphones out of kids' schools. There are amazing organizations, Phone Free Schools, Smartphone Free Childhood is a neat organization in the UK that's now come over here. These are great organizations that bring science forward and are getting real traction. I believe phones are going to get. There's no way a smartphone should be in kids' schools. There's science that says it hurts kids' learning. Of course, it puts kids at risk for cyberbullying and to be filmed. And girls, I talk about a girl who killed herself because her assault was filmed at school, and she couldn't tolerate the thought of that happens every day almost in my practice. Like, that is just what happens at kids' schools. It's sick that people like Common Sense Media have convinced schools that that's where phones should be, because that's what they do. So anyway, so work with your school. And I would say, if there's the number one, or one of the top things, I think parents have been deceived, is this just big fat lie that once your kids hit preteens and teens, that what they most need, you'll hear parents say this, like, oh, my kids most need their peers. I can't limit their technology because they most need to go connect in a back room or a basement with their peers because that's what's supposed to drive them. No, like, science, the people who do the science, they laugh at that. They're like, we've done this so much, we don't even, whether your kid is a kid, a child, or a preteen or a teen, definitely a teen if your kid's 15 or 17, the most important emotional connection that your kid needs is, number one, family. Kids and strangers on a smartphone are not meant to be raising your kid. That is laughable. We've been duped by powerful industry-funded parties that have convinced us of that. And the second most important emotional connection, and this is to prevent your kid from being depressed and killing themselves or being suicidal. So number one, family, and number two, school connectedness, the community, the teachers there. So of course we don't want phones at school. And of course we really want to think about whether we want to introduce this distracting smartphone that's designed by industry to pull your kid away from family, school, the outdoors, which kids need to be physically and emotionally healthy. So throw away the industry myth. Like, the book Hold On to Your Kids is a really good book. It just Neufeld and Mattei, they named it right years ago. They just sort of understood that, like, this whole idea that kids are supposed to be raising kids is laughable, ridiculous, industry funded. That's what I say, is industry funded. I don't think they necessarily, because they wrote this before really the tech, but the smartphone push, the social media push, it is designed to pull kids away from your family and your school, to put them in this Lord of the Flies, peer-on-peer environment. And kids are going to say, girls get convinced, like, these are my best friends forever, this is great. And then inevitably, girls get too attractive or too smart, or somebody's boyfriend looks at them, and the other side of it is they're going to get together that night, and for no good reason, let's blow up Sally. And I'm going to see Sally in my practice the next day, and she's going to be cutting and suicidal and potentially end up in the hospital.
Well, and getting online is not really even about connecting with their peers anymore. It's about consuming content that the algorithm is choosing for you, and also connecting you with adult strangers and predators and drug dealers, like.
Correct. If peer connections, potentially have some help. They're always below family. They're always below school. But kids should have real world connections where they go meet with other girls and they can walk up, and 9 of the 10 girls, or like all the girls, aren't sitting down there with their head buried in a phone. So like at a school, like, have your school community. Like, that's sick that we allow that to happen at school. So the one kid that is having the science-based life of not having a phone has to walk up, and all her peers are doing, and she feels that FOMO.
Yeah.
created. So
Mm.
adults need to step up and take action to protect kids from this profound science that parents just don't of persuasive design. I would like to make it a household word. That's what we need
Mhm.
to do.
Great. Yeah. And for the Phone Free Schools thing, I love there's a toolkit at phonefreeschoolsmovement.org, I want to say. And they have a great toolkit you can just download and send to your school and say, these are all the reasons why we need to ban phones bell to bell at school and how you can implement it cheaply and easily. So I love that you brought that up. And then I think the next wave is all the same addictiveness and bad content that kids are getting access to at school on phones is also available to them on these adult devices we give them to learn from, iPads and Chromebooks. And so I was really grateful to see at Jonathan Haidt, a couple of his recent talks, him talk about how he's going to introduce a fifth norm of reducing ed tech, which I'm really excited about. And I think you would be on board with.
Yeah, one of my chapters in my book is the Silicon Valley's secret science goes to school. Americans, whatever, have been sold on luxury. This idea, and maybe we can't stop that. I would like a Ferrari in my driveway. I don't know why I have an old Toyota, but anyway, like okay, so we're all sold on luxury. But so the ed tech industry has convinced a lot of people that like luxury is somehow having your kid sit in front of a screen all day. It's not. As I talk about in my book, where the tech elite send their kids to school or they attend are places like Phillips Exeter, which I have no business ever affording, 60 grand a year, where Mark Zuckerberg went, where Common Sense Media, Jim Steyer's went. It's 12 students sitting around a table with one teacher, typically without technology, and they talk stuff out. That's developing the leaders in the United States. Lakeside School, where Bill Gates went and sent all his kids, he talks again 12-to-1 student ratio, limited technology. Bill comes out of there saying small classroom size, which our kids need, not investment in tech. We need to understand what kids need at school for both their learning and their emotional health is small class size so they can connect with teachers. Don't be sold by the ed tech industry that a device is luxury. No, what is luxury and what is actually is I talk about in my book, what really helps kids. Look at where the ultra rich send their kids to school. Lakeside, Phillips Exeter, small class size, limited tech. Bill Gates says these personal relationships that I developed with teachers is what made me who I am. Every kid deserves that.
Yeah. I keep hearing about the relationship between your child and an adult, a trusted adult at school is so important. I think our children deserve just as much of a chance at success and happiness and health as the tech executives' children. Like, why do they get some kind of leg up on some secret information or secret upbringing that we don't have access to? It's very, very difficult for most families to access that sort of upbringing for their children.
That's what I talk about. Like, let's look at how these tech elite are raising their kids. Every kid deserves that.
Mm-hmm.
And by debunking a lot of these remarkably harmful myths about and look to see what the reality is of how they raise their kids behind the screens, which is 180 degrees away from what their organizations will tell you. Take a look and see what how they're raising their kids. It is elucidating and enlightening, but it also makes you slightly sick to your stomach. That how can you do this to kids? And that can be attainable when we all come together and decide that we want real science and real health for our kids, not industry funded sort of like we're living in this world like a fast food maker somehow determined the science that our kids dietary science, and it's been like they're sold on eating shakes and fries all day. Like that's akin to what's happened. We need to start to bring in like real science, which exists. Fair Play, that's a great organization. Screen Strong. These are places where I'm on the advisory board. They bring the science forward to Fair Play's Children's Screen Time Action Network, Screen Strong. They bring like the science that those are other communities where parents can go and say like, okay, like what is the science? What can I do to raise my kids?
Yeah. And so thank you for outlining the science in your book. I think it's something that parents could, if their school's not coming around to this type of information, we could buy a copy and drop it off with our principal or the decision makers at the district. Is something that I probably should have done before I had to leave my school because they exposed my children to lots of bad stuff on the devices there.
I'm
But
sorry.
it's okay. That's a story for another time. But tell listeners where they can best find your book.
Amazon's a great place. Punch in Better Than Real Life. I've got my website, richardfreed.com. I'm going to try to, I went away to write this book, and I'm going to try to write more articles and things of that sort. There's a
Great.
few articles on there,
Okay.
and I'm luckily being able to talk with people like you, and sort of things like that will show up. But like,
Yeah.
yeah, if I can bring a little bit of help and make, that's what the book is here for, to make
Hmm.
the science that these very people at the top
Hmm.
are, and it's not real complicated. It's just like, let's give our kids, let's not be deceived by the
Hmm.
junk science that's being thrown at us.
Yeah, and parents are lucky these days. We do have resources. There's plenty of books I have over here, that parents can read, but this one really took a different approach to the science and breaking it down for us, and I think that's really helpful in imagining our children in these scenarios and what we don't want for them. And so I really appreciate all the work, years of work you did to put this together. I keep hearing about this book everywhere. So everyone's really taking to it and applying it to their conversations with their peers and other parents. So thank you so much for having this conversation, Richard. This was super helpful.
Nikki, I'm blessed to spend some time with you talking about this, and I so much appreciate all the work you're doing for kids and families. So thank you.
Thank you.